Bing, bing, bong. We are back. This is darkest moments in TV history. And then this is in Spanish. I don't know
Bom
what
dia,
that
Mariana. O quarteirão continua todo cercado por policiais militares. Nós
18
estamos
hours
afastados
into
por
kidnapping.
orientação da polícia.
What?
Deste ponto aqui, é possível avistar apenas a janela onde, neste momento, o rapaz se
Where the
encontra
boy
com
meets
as duas
with two
adolescentes.
It's
teenagers.
Tuesday, October
Someone
14th,
met.
2008. As television crews arrive on the scene of an unfolding news event occurring in Sao Paulo, Brazil, a camera is trained up at the third-story apartment unit where two young girls are being held captive. The ordeal was already developing into one of the
It's like a
longest
hostage
hostage
standoff?
situations the area had ever seen, as it now entered its 18th grueling hour. However, there was optimism at the time, as negotiations between the hostage taker and law enforcement were ongoing, and the local news station speculated that they would soon be covering a peaceful resolution to this episode. Though they couldn't have been more wrong. Instead, this single news report was merely the first domino to fall, leading to a chain reaction unlike anything we've ever seen in the world of television. As little did this news station and all the others en route to cover this impasse know, but they would have a say in how this story ends. This is the story of the Eloa Pimentel hostage
How?
incident, or as it's since come to be known, the darkest moment in television history.
How?
Aproveitar esse momento que a gente sabe que os três estão assistindo. Lindeberg, somos um amigo.
Disclaimer,
da
following
família.
program saying. Oh. Like, is it the mere observation of all the televisions or like the news reporters covering this that made it worse? Or like, how are they dictating what happened?
Before we fully dive down this rabbit hole, I want to give a major thank you to today's
Beam.
sponsor, Beam. For most of my life, I've struggled with sleeping.
this?
Whether that be falling asleep or staying asleep, it feels like I'm never waking up
This is
feeling
about
fully
sleeping?
refreshed, which always seems to negatively affect my mood and my ability to focus while I'm working. I've even tried sleep
100%
supplements.
true. Honestly, sleep is so important. Listen, sometimes, I mean, it's late right now, and I will, oh no, my laptop's gonna die. But I will get some sleep, and then usually if I'm on break, like a 15-minute break, or like even my lunch, if I'm tired, I'll literally just go in my car, close my eyes, set a timer. And like, if it's a 30-minute break, I'll sleep for like maybe 20, and then like just go throw water on my face. But it is because it's like, if I do start getting tired, I feel my body and my brain just shutting down. And like my stigmatism gets worse, and that's when like lights get super bright, and like I can't read. I start seeing shadow people. No, I'm joking. No, but like lack of sleep is very bad. And like decision making and making sure that you're healthy. It's like, I don't know. I always think about it like if I don't have enough sleep, I can make a wrong turn while driving or look down at my phone while driving, swerve and crash. And it's like all of that is a domino effect of me just not getting good sleep. And if you knew my sleeping schedule, you'd be like, what the hell, dude? But then I'm like, no, 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 I try. And I have no other time to record, so it's like I need to, it's like 1:30 right now. I'm like, no, 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 it's fine.
In the past, but
Nick,
none of them
help
ever
us
really
out with
seemed to do the
sleeping.
trick until I tried
This is called
Beam's Dream
Beam.
Powder. This is a healthy hot cocoa mix scientifically formulated to help you get the best night's sleep possible.
What?
And not only does it taste good, but it's really worked for me, as I noticed myself getting tired much faster than usual, and I haven't been waking up nearly as often in the middle of the night. Because of this, I'm waking up feeling more refreshed than usual.
Almost genius. I want to know what's inside of it, make sure it's healthy and it doesn't affect like you know, your brain, but like the stem connection to your spine. But I mean, Beam selling hot cocoa to help you sleep. That's like genius, you know, because you have like a nice little cup of hot cocoa before you go to bed, and then you just like pass out. But then it's like, what chemical are they using to help you sleep? And then is that addictive? Or not like addictive, but then it's like your body becomes reliant on.
And I'm not feeling nearly as groggy as I did when I tried those other sleeping aids.
Whoa.
In fact, every once in a while, I'm actually starting to wake up before my alarm for once. I can't talk enough about how important getting good sleep is, which I think 80% of participants improving
Oh, where's the link?
Nick Crowley or
It's Nick Crowley for 50% off. That's cool. And then maybe it's like if it does kind of affect your system, it's like a maybe once or twice a week type thing. And then it's like you get that good sleep. Now there's no such thing as catching up on sleep. I need you guys to know that. Like if you stay up late one night and then try to catch up on that doesn't exist. Your body will slowly decay. You could probably see it in my speech and my ability to read and form sentences. It, my sleep has been detrimental my whole life. No, but 50% off, Nick Crowley.
Scan the QR code to start shopping Beam's
I
profiles.
like this ad. That was a good ad. No, because that other one that buys your debt, and then sometimes they have ones that are like, oh, your information is online. Pay us, and we'll take it down. And secretly, what those companies are doing is they're paying those companies, and they're like, hey, we have this guy's information. It's ours now. It's illegal for you to have it because now we own it. So if you want to buy it from us, that's cool. And then that's how they make their money. By just
It was a
reselling your
warm, muggy
information.
Monday afternoon. Most residents across Sao Paulo had been busy starting off their work week as 15-year-old
Sao
Eloa
Paulo?
Cristina
Where's that?
Pimentel arrived home from school for the day.
Brazil?
Best described as a fun-loving, good-natured kid, Eloa excelled in her studies, where she met her closest friend, Nayara de Silva. And as she entered her family's apartment that day, she did so with Nayara by her side, as well as two other male friends, Legaio Viala de Oliveira and Victor de la Compass, with a group gathering together to work on a school project, until they heard the sound of rustling at the door. By this point, Eloa's parents Ana and Aldo had been busy at work, while her
What?
brother Douglas had stayed after school, meaning that the sound they had just heard couldn't have come from either of them, with Eloa's confusion quickly turning to fear as the door was pushed in and then broke completely open, revealing the source of the sound.
Burglars or whatever?
Standing there was 22-year-old Lindenberg Fernandez Alves, a man who Eloa had come to know all too well. Almost 3 years before, the then 12-year-old Eloa had caught the eye of Lindenberg, who at that time was already 19 years old. Though despite this glaring age gap, the two would fall in love with each other.
Bro, what? He was 19, fell in love with a 12-year-old?
And proceed to date for the next 2 years
They dated?
and 7 months. A period of time that was anything but smooth sailing.
What the fuck?
By this point, Lindenberg had become well known locally for his temper, with most describing him as a hothead and incredibly aggressive, which Eloa would come to realize firsthand, as he quickly grew jealous of seemingly anything and everything Eloa would do without him.
This is wild. When I was in high school, there was I don't know, a bunch of girls, yeah? But like I dated this girl. She ended up being like, you're the one I'm cheating on or with my boyfriend or whatever. She had a boyfriend in Colorado who was in rehab and who was 35. My brother in Christ, I took this girl to prom. I was like 16, 17. I was like, what do you mean he's in rehab and he's 35 and he's your boyfriend? I'm the guy you're cheating on with? Dude, it broke my understanding of reality. Honestly, way too young. I was like, I didn't deserve that. No. But then it's like looking back on it, it's like, what the fuck is wrong with that guy? How are you in Colorado? How are you 35 talking to a 16-year-old? To the girl I took to prom? I'll beat your ass. No. But then it's like, dude, that I don't even know. Like at the time, I was just like, oh, I reckon I just need to be older and girls will like me. But then it's like, what the fuck, actually? And then now the older I get, dude, you got a husband overseas? She's like 65. I'm like, yo, ma, what's up? No, I'm joking.
Occasion, Lindenberg had even stalked Eloa when she was out for a walk, following her every movement across town, before he'd eventually catch her sitting alone at the bus stop. This, for whatever reason, enraged him, and he would go on to confront her both verbally and physically, with it being reported that Lindenberg had attacked her not only on this occasion, but likely on several others as well. And after over 2.5 years of dating, Eloa had finally had enough, recognizing that Lindenberg couldn't be fixed, or at least not by her, and so she broke up with him. But this was something that Lindenberg just couldn't accept, as in his mind,
Then he saw them go because they went to school, yeah? So it's like, or I mean, this guy's like fucking super old. But then it's like, there's 2 girls and then 2 boys. And then they were all working on a school project together because they had the same class. Then this guy comes up out of nowhere.
life without Eloa
What the
was no
hell?
life at all, and he had to do something about it.
No shot.
Now, Lindenberg stood in the doorway facing the girl who had broke his heart just months before, with his pistol pointed directly at her. Eloa immediately screamed, but was silenced by Lindenberg, who
Hold on. I didn't even mean to lore drop about myself, but that girl or whatever, she's fine. Hopefully she's fine. I think she's married and she's in a happy relationship, and I think it's to someone her own age. So it's like people live and grow and all is forgiven. She probably regrets it, but then it's like, don't feel bad. I mean, maybe she was just taken advantage of by that guy. Like she was one of those skater girls, yeah? But then it's like, yeah, this is wild, dude.
slapped her across the face.
Because it's like if I'm a parent, what do I do? You're not allowed to go out and talk to boys, or it's like what the you become lesbian. It's like no, it's I don't even dude. Parenting's gonna be so scary for me because I'm just gonna be like we gotta go to church or something. I don't know what I'm doing. Hey, listen, I'll go church, video games, and maybe you could smoke weed with mom. And then she's like, what? I'm like, "Look, I don't know. It worked for me. I'm very wholesome. I love video games. I love hanging out. I went to get gas today actually, and you know what? I was so mad because they pulled up and then there's only like three, and then I wasn't able to park, so I had to like reverse or whatever. And then it was an old lady, and then she walked inside and she asked the gas station employee or whatever. She was like, "Can you help? There's something wrong with the pump or something." And then I was like, "Oh, I can help." So I just like pumped her gas for her, and then I pumped my gas. But then I was like, no, in that moment, I like all of it just washed away. Like I was mad because I didn't know who parked there or like who parked like that. And I was like, why would you do that? It's just messy because what if more people need to get gas? I know I'm just another person, yeah? But then it's like, what if someone else other than me needs to get gas? But then it's like, oh, she needed help pumping gas, and then like my heart just like melted, and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And like it was and this just happened today, yeah? I'm like, I'm done. And hold on, ready? It was so funny. I got back in my car and I was like, that's my good deed for the day or whatever. Like Franklin from GTA, like when he does a good deed or like a blue dot mission, they're like, oh, thank you so much, Franklin. He's like, that's my good deed for the day.
Before going on to express frustration towards the other three in the group.
Yeah, but when it comes to, I don't know, dude. I need to stop watching these videos because I think I'm just getting just spooked.
As they weren't supposed to be there. They were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, and yet he claimed that this would not spare them from his wrath. He was there to kill Eloa and himself, and anyone else who might stand in his way. Though he seemed to be in no rush to do so, as he forced the four teenagers onto a bed and forbade any of them from talking, before he would stand there and wait for hours weighing his options. Until he too heard the sound of rustling at the door. It was Aldo, Eloa's father, who had arrived home from work only to find Eloa's brother Douglas sitting outside the front door. Douglas had gotten home over an hour before, only to find the door locked and the inside deathly quiet, forcing him to wait for his father to arrive home with the keys, all the while having no inclination that inside, his own sister was being held at gunpoint. As Aldo approached the door, Lindenberg would begin yelling, shouting at him to back away and that he had his daughter and her friends inside, marking the official beginning of the standoff. Police would arrive almost immediately to the scene, where they would quickly realize just how
What
daunting
titles
the
this
task
darkest
before them
moment? Oh
was.
no,
Lindenberg was more unwell than they could have ever imagined, with his temper proving to be their biggest obstacle during that first day, as in some instances he was actually receptive to negotiations, even allowing the release of the two boys inside, before he would suddenly shut down and become enraged, seemingly out of nowhere.
O que você quer? Fala pra mim pra eu poder te ajudar, cara.
Eu quero matar Eloá e matar e liberar a base. Eu tô agredindo a minha namorada, essa desgraçada aqui. Qual sua namorada? Cala a boca.
At one point, he even fired a shot through the front door at a passing civilian, incorrectly believing that they were trying to interfere. One minute he was hot, and the next he was cold. And as these tense minutes turned to hours, the reality of the situation for these negotiators became apparent. One wrong statement, even one wrong word, could cause everything to come crashing down. It was a fragile ordeal, and the following day, these negotiations would only become more complicated.
You lie? Could you just lie during negotiations, or is that like against the law? Like if those policemen were like, no, everything's fine, just let them go or whatever, you're home free. We actually have money for you. And then he comes out, they shoot him. You know what I'm saying? No, it's like, yeah, is that like a weird legal loophole where negotiators can't lie? Like if the guy's like, I want an airplane, and they're like, we'll give you an airplane. You have to give him an airplane? Or like right when the guy walks out, you just snipe him or something. Like, is that allowed?
Caso de violência que está acontecendo neste momento em Santo André, no ABC Paulista, jovem mantém a ex-namorada e amiga dela reféns.
Hold on, flashback to the beginning. This is when the news gets a hold of it, and then somehow the news, they put it on the news. No, they have a TV, I think, in the house, so they're going to be watching the news, and then anything the news... Oh, whoa, dude.
Polícia cercou o conjunto habitacional.
We pray this video has a happy ending, but I
Está lá
don't...
no local. Conta pra gente qual é a situação nesse momento, Graciela.
During the local 7 a.m. news that following morning, the first reporter would arrive to the scene to document this developing story. In the footage, we can see the massive police presence and the window of the apartment where Lindenberg was holding the two girls. And almost immediately, the story was met with a skyrocketing number of viewers and soaring ratings that producers could only dream of. With this single report, they had just struck television gold, and suddenly other stations and dozens of reporters began flocking to the scene to capture a piece of this unfolding drama in real time. It seemed like in an instant all of Brazil was now tuned into their TVs and waiting to see what would happen next. And among those viewers was Lindenberg himself. Recognizing that the news was starting to take note of his story, and that the area was now swarming with cameras waiting on his every move, Lindenberg's behavior began to grow more erratic. At one point, he forced Eloa to the window, standing behind her and demanding that she give the cameras a thumbs up, in order to let the people at home know that she was okay, and that Lindenberg wasn't hurting her. Though soon after, he would approach another window, this time holding his revolver, and without warning, begin firing randomly at the street below, in the direction of the news crews. Thankfully, again, no one was hurt by these shots, but it was becoming evident that Lindenberg was almost putting on a show for the cameras. And now that he was feeling like the star of the show, he was growing less and less interested in working with negotiators.
Revolver, he probably has no extra ammo. How many shots, bro? Please, dude. Like simple math. If it, you know, even if it's an 8 revolver, count the shots, make sure, I don't know, dude.
And they recognized this too, and knew that they had to do
Yeah, but then it's like, what if he has a pocket full of bullets, I guess? I don't know. Yeah, that makes sense.
something to force Lindenberg to continue working with them, which led to their
dude,
decision to cut power to the
Where
units,
is this? Brazil?
leaving Lindenberg in the dark, without air conditioning, and unable to watch the television.
Eu ligo, mas vamos conversar.
As a result, Lindenberg went ballistic, striking Eloa while on the phone with negotiators. Though despite his initial reaction, this move actually ended up working, as Nayara was eventually released under the condition that the power be restored, which meant that Lindenberg was now down to just one hostage, the person that he had sought out from the very beginning, and the whole reason he was there.
No, dude.
As the sun set
I
on that
mean,
Tuesday
God bless, because there was once 4 hostages, now we're just down to 1. That still isn't good enough. There needs to be 0.
and the standoff passed its 40th hour. Some remained positive, while others viewed the whole thing as helpless. But whatever opinions those in the area had at the time, it's safe to say that no one could have expected the baffling turn that this case was headed for just the following day.
Like pizza? Like a pizza guy. Send a pizza guy with a gun and then be like, here's some food. Bah! You know, or something. I don't know, dude. Holy fuck. No, dude. It's like, how would the movies handle something like this? I don't know. Like someone rappelling from the ceiling, breaking through the window. Oh, jeez, bro.
It was
pizza
1:30
one
p.m.
sounds
on
cool.
Wednesday
Pizza
the
guy with a
15th,
gun?
the 3rd day of Eloa's captivity, when suddenly, inside that quiet apartment building, the silence would be interrupted by the ringing of a telephone. Lindenberg rushed to pick it up, expecting it to be the negotiator who he had been speaking with the previous day, but instead, he heard a different voice.
Lindenberg, tá tudo bem aí?
É.
Ô Lindenberg, somos um amigo da família, a gente queria saber se tá tudo bem, só isso. Lindenberg, é Luiz Guerra, tudo bem? Somos conhecidos da...
Luiz Guerra.
Sou da Sônia Abrão, repórter da Sônia Abrão, a gente só tá em nome da sua família, porque sua mãe está desesperada, a gente quer saber se tá tudo bem, só isso.
His family?
Acting without the permission of the police or Eloa's family, a reporter named Luis Guerra from the Sonia Abrero news station.
No. It's a reporter pretending to be his family. Yo, dude, that reporter just crossed the
Managed
fucking
to track
line.
down the apartment's phone number and call Lindenberg while in the middle of this active hostage situation.
Vocês estão ao vivo aí?
Não, estamos gravando e vai ser exibido na Sônia Abrão tudo o que você falar, tudo. Às 2 horas entra no ar, o que você estiver falando vai ficar no ar.
It's not hard to understand why this is such a terrible idea, as we already know that Lindenberg was highly emotional and could be set off on a rampage with just a single word.
And this guy is just
And
a
yet,
reporter. He's
Luis
not a
had
highly
called
trained
anyway,
professional,
and he
like
was
a
clearly
negotiator.
unprepared to handle.
Dude, that's why it's like, again, me with my brain, like send a pizza guy with a gun or rappel through the window. It's like, yeah, these are freaking skits, Pablo. I watch too much movies or something. Fucking, I don't have, like, negotiators go to school for this. They're like, they know. I have no idea. I don't know what they know. But also I'm assuming that, you know, they go over every instinct, and they have all the anecdotes or something, like the real stories that like other negotiators have been through, and then they study those ones. But then just for a random reporter?
An interview of this magnitude, as he nervously starts by first lying to Lindenberg, claiming to be a friend of his family, before eventually revealing that he was actually a reporter, and that their phone conversation would be played for the world to hear. Throughout this nearly 8-minute long phone call, Luis would push things further and further, even at one point speaking directly to Eloa.
Alô?
Oi, Eloa, é Luiz Guerra da Sônia Abrão, tudo bem?
Quem tá falando?
Luiz Guerra, repórter da Sônia Abrão, tudo bem com você?
Tá tudo tranquilo. Eu quero almoçar.
Você quer almoçar?
Tô fraca.
She wants
Fica
to eat.
tranquila, eu conversei com o Lindenberg, a gente vai conversar de novo. Ele tá te tratando bem?
Tá me tratando bem.
Who sounds weak and exhausted as she sends a message to her family telling them that she loves them.
The food delivery
Olha,
idea
você tá
is
precisando
good.
mandar um recado
Whoa.
pra sua mãe, alguma coisa?
Yeah, because I assume just because they're in the house, yeah, they're already in the apartment or something, that they have like fridge and a stove, and they could just cook. So it's like, if she's still hungry, they haven't cooked anything, they're not, you know? I mean, maybe, yeah, again, this is fucking high intensity. But then it's like, food delivery would be genius. How would they do it? No idea. They would be like, set it down and then walk away or something.
Quero saber como é
But then it's like you can have people hide and then just one food delivery guy or something. I have no
que
idea.
tá, como meus familiares estão.
Tá tudo bem com eles, tá tudo tranquilo.
Um beijo da minha mãe pro
man.
meu pai.
Pode fazer uma...
Com eles.
Pode falar de novo, mande um beijo de novo.
Eu queria falar pra minha mãe que eu amo ela. Pro meu pai também.
This reporter is fucking scum.
And in what might be the worst moment of the entire call, Luis accidentally speaks over her at one point, before his producer clearly tells him to get her to repeat that line, in a shameless attempt at getting a good soundbite for their story.
Tá tudo tranquilo.
Um beijo da minha mãe pro meu pai.
Pode fazer uma...
Com eles.
Pode falar de novo, mande um beijo de novo.
Luis's stunt was indescribably unprofessional, as he had inserted himself into hostage negotiations that he was utterly unprepared to take on. And though his words didn't immediately lead to any escalations from Lindenberg, the effects of this interview were nothing shy of devastating.
Is a lot of people gonna start
Just one
calling
day
in?
prior, Lindenberg had seen his work on TV for the very first time. And now, with this interview, it fully sank in just how important he was. For the first time in his life, all eyes were on him. He was the main character of the biggest story transpiring in all of Brazil. And
Oh, it
now,
is in Brazil.
he
What the
was
heck?
inspired to write another
They said
chapter.
San something, and I kind of just assumed because of the architecture. I'm no
From
geoguesser,
here,
but
Lindenberg would continue his antics at the window, using these opportunities to interact with the cameras and hold the media's attention, while using Eloa as a human shield to prevent police snipers from firing at him. As at one point, he forces her to use tied-together sheets to lift up food from negotiators below. All the while, he's looming ominously behind her.
there goes the
And
friggin'
this
delivery
wasn't solely
idea.
for the cameras either, as by this point, the audience wasn't just watching at home, but many had gathered outside the apartment to watch the action unfold in person, treating it like some sort of public spectacle. And all while this was happening, police were trying desperately to continue their negotiations. But by this point, Lindenberg was far too distracted by all this attention, as he would even hop onto another live interview shortly after.
Todos os amigos estão dizendo, o pessoal que te conhece também está falando que você sempre foi calmo, sempre foi trabalhador, sempre foi um cara legal, que o que você está fazendo hoje deve ser um surto que você está passando, uma crise emocional muito séria. Mas você, de qualquer maneira, mesmo em crise, você está se segurando, você está fazendo as coisas com um certo critério, você está liberando as pessoas, você não está fazendo mal para ninguém. Então, já dá um final para essa história que seja todo mundo são e salvo, inclusive você, inclusive você.
While on air, the host herself didn't just ask Lindenberg questions, but she began actively trying to negotiate Eloa's release, despite again having no authority and no training for this kind of event.
Dude, these fucking
Você
reporters.
vai entregar os 2 revólveres para ela, você vai tirar as balas, entregar na mão da Eloá.
The news station needs to be held accountable, not just the reporters, you know? Like the entire news station itself.
Exatamente, mas eu não vou dar a hora e não vou falar qual que vai ser o momento.
Tudo bem, mas você vai descer e a gente vai deixar isso aqui claro para o Brasil inteiro. Você está dizendo que você vai descer desarmado, completamente indefeso, com as mãos para cima, ou seja, você vai se render sem nenhuma resistência, para que as coisas terminem em paz. É isso? Confirma pra gente, confirma para o Brasil inteiro isso.
What? Hold on.
É confirmado.
Huh?
Na melhor hora eu vou fazer isso.
It was evident from both interviews that these reporters were not taking this case as seriously as
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah, but she just that reporter just said, okay, everything's gonna be okay. You're gonna come out with your hands up and the guy agreed. He was like, yeah, just give me time. Now that could be, but then it's like, well, that's what the heck? How did she even pull that off?
should be, failing to understand just how violent Lindenberg was, and just how quickly he could become enraged. And if it wasn't obvious just how twisted the media's perception of this case had become, they would then go on to air a segment with their trusted legal consultant, who gave his expert opinion on how he believed this case would end.
Ooh, that's bad.
Vamos falar do que espera o Lindenberg aqui fora. Boa tarde, viu, doutora Ademar? Prazer tê-la aqui novamente.
Yeah, to have a fucking legal guy tell you how they're gonna be like, yeah, he's gonna get shot immediately or go to jail forever. And then the second he hears that, it's just gonna go right back to a double S word, H word. So, unaliving of both.
E com a sua experiência nos orientar aí sobre o que vai acontecer daqui pra frente, para que a gente possa ter uma ideia,
Bom,
claro.
eu sou muito otimista, né? Eu espero que isso termine sem pizza, né? E num casamento futuro entre ele e a namorada apaixonada dele, né?
Certo.
Ele está passando uma fase momentânea, né? Ele também tem perdido a motivação de viver, porque um rapaz jovem, quando se apaixona, muitas vezes desequilibra, que é o
Radicaliza
caso
mesmo, né?
Então, mas isso vai terminar realmente em final feliz, graças a Deus, eu tenho plena certeza.
With the reporter theorizing that this would all end in pizza, with the couple having a meal and reconciling their differences before eventually going on to get married, as this was all just a phase for the young man and his passionate girlfriend. And they somehow made things even worse, as the host would follow this segment up by stating that Lindenberg was still going to have to answer for his crimes, before running down the list of every single charge that he was going
Okay,
to face.
that's where they fucked up.
Informação que ele vai
But if their entire ploy was to just brainwash, and that goes full circle back to the just lying as a negotiator. You know what I'm saying?
Responder aos crimes de sequestro e invasão de domicílio,
This
disparo
bitch
e porte ilegal de arma de fogo.
fucking made
Ele
it
deve ter
worse.
alívio
Single-handedly
na
made it
pena
worse.
porque ele não tem antecedentes criminais, ele é réu primário e a pena para sequestro seria de 1 a 3 anos.
This obviously only made the situation even more helpless in Lindenberg's mind, as she was essentially telling him that no matter what happens from here, even if it were to all end peacefully, his life was already essentially over based on the crimes he had already committed. And this wasn't the only thing his TV was telling him. As mentioned previously, these news crews were on the scene 24/7, watching and listening to everything that the police were doing all the while. And as a result, they would overhear officers discussing their plans on how they were going to attempt to end the situation. To which, incredibly, these stations would proceed to air this information in real time, meaning that everything the police were trying to do to help Eloa would be heard by Lindenberg well before they would attempt to carry it out. And he would see it all too, as due to the constant live coverage outside their window, he would be able to see any officer attempting to approach the door or the windows. The media was not only making Lindenberg feel invincible, but they were quite literally making him untouchable, as whenever the police would make plans, he would hear it on the TV and simply adjust his course to ensure that they wouldn't capture him. Whatever the police said and whatever the police did, Lindenberg was watching over them all the while, and so they had to be extra diligent and avoid doing anything rash to keep the situation stable. But as another long day came to an end, and the sun rose on the 4th morning of this ordeal, they would proceed to do the exact opposite. Following her release from the apartment, Nayara had been recovering in private away from the media, trying her best to grapple with the situation that she had just endured.
They're gonna interview her.
As well as dealing with the fear of what might happen to her closest friend. However, on the morning of Thursday the 17th, a pair of unexpected visitors would arrive at her home. Standing at her door were 2 police officers that had been working Eloa's case who requested that Nayara come with them in order to help assist with their negotiations. Apparently, that morning, Lindenberg had agreed to facilitate Eloa's release, but only on the condition that Nayara and Douglas meet the 2 outside of the apartment and walk with them down into police custody. This was due to the fact that Lindenberg had become paranoid of being shot by officers, but having Nayara and Douglas there would essentially provide a shield for him. And so, the police agreed. But by this point, Nayara had no idea that this deal had ever been made, and that she was now being driven back to the kidnapping site, where she would soon have to meet her captor face to face, yet again.
You're using
and there
her
was
as a
little to
human
no time for
shield?
her
Dude,
to
there are
react
0 professionals. What the fuck is happening? What?
Upon her arrival, as she was almost immediately thrust into negotiations.
Amor, vou subir. Tá bom, na frente da porta.
Não precisa subir, tá bom?
Tá bom.
Nenhum.
Tá, deixa eu falar com ele agora, amor.
Tudo certo.
Vai dar tudo certo, prometi pra você desde o começo, tá bom?
Tá bom.
Beijo, te amo.
Oi, Nayara.
Tudo bom?
Tá melhor já?
Tô, você tá calmo aí?
Tudo calmo.
Você vai fazer mesmo tudo isso que você tá falando?
Confia em mim?
Confio.
And so, the cameras followed as Nayara and Douglas
She's
began their
about-
trek up to the home. Though almost immediately, Lindenberg had a change of heart and began yelling to negotiators that he no longer wanted to do this, as he was nervous about Douglas being there. Instead insisting that Nayara come up to the unit alone, where he would then open the door and she would take Eloa's hand and the 3 would walk out together. Based on this behavior, it was obvious that Lindenberg wasn't to be trusted, as he had already backed off the original deal. Plus, part of his deal was that no police officers would be allowed in the building, meaning that there was no backup for Nayara, making the whole thing far too dangerous to even consider.
That's so stupid, bro.
And yet,
they still
the
did it.
Negotiators agreed anyway, and
Fucking
gave Nayara
so
the
dumb,
call
bro.
to walk up those stairs and approach
Is she about
the
to get
door alone.
kidnapped?
And so, with no backup whatsoever, the pressure of her friend's life on her shoulders, the police officers talking in her ear, and the hundreds of thousands of people watching at home, she felt as if she had no choice but to walk up those stairs step by step, until she stood just feet away from the door, where she waited to see Eloa.
She's gonna get taken in, huh?
Though when the door was opened, she was instead met with the sight of Lindenberg, who reached out his arms, grabbed Nayara's hand, and pulled her inside, shutting the door behind them. And with that, Nayara was a hostage once more. This whole sequence has to be one of the worst handlings of a hostage situation that I've ever seen. Even having Nayara at the scene to begin with was questionable enough, as remember, she was only 15 years old at the time, and she had just survived this traumatic experience only one day before. But sending her up there alone, with no form of protection, is shocking. And you might think that after all of this, the news stations would finally just back off and stop intruding on the case, as clearly things were becoming more and more dire. However, they only became more obsessed, as Nayara's recapture only boosted their ratings even higher, and garnered the case a whole new level of
What the hell?
that they just needed to exploit. And so, these reporters began calling the unit repeatedly, doing anything they could in an attempt to speak to Lindenberg. Though even when he wouldn't answer, they would still try to speak to him directly over their broadcast.
Porque a gente podia, quem sabe, aproveitar esse momento que a gente sabe que os três estão assistindo aqui o programa e eles estão bem, que assim que o Lindenberg ele confirmou isso aqui para nossa produção, eles estão bem, estão tranquilos, estão só esperando o momento certo, pedir para uma das meninas, quem sabe, ou ele mesmo, desse um sinal agora aqui na janela para mostrar para todo mundo que está tudo bem, que está ok e que essa história vai acabar o mais rápido que todo mundo espera. Se os três puderem, um deles dar um sinal, acenar, fazer alguma coisa para mostrar para todo mundo, para deixar todo mundo mais calmo.
Instructing him to give specific signals to show that he was hearing them. Both the media and Lindenberg were stretching his 15 minutes of fame for as long as they possibly could. And by that Friday, the ordeal would reach its 100th hour, making it the most prolonged hostage crisis in Brazil's entire history, with there being no sign of a resolution in sight. And it was obvious that this longevity was weighing heavily on Lindenberg, whose fiery persona had eventually turned into despondency, as he grew more and more exhausted, with his words alluding to the possibility that he was finally going to snap.
Dude, just agree, bro. Dude, these fucking
And by this point, Brazilian officials were tired of their negotiations anyway, and knew that it was time for a different tactic, sending in their Special Tactical Actions Group, known as GATE. Although, due to the cameras on the scene, the team knew that they couldn't just scale up the wall and enter through the window, since Lindenberg would be able to see the whole thing unfolding on his TV. And any time he would go to the window, he used Eloa as a human shield, meaning that any plan to shoot him from long range without risking the life of Eloa was nearly impossible. There was really only one way in: the front door, with their plan being to set a charge and breach said door should Lindenberg's behavior escalate, with the camera showing the entirety of the setup. At one point, they even captured the team secretly raising up a gun to one of the officers, despite the officers telling Lindenberg that there were going to be no guns involved, though their cover was clearly blown. And so, the charge was set, and the streets fell silent, as all of Brazil watched on, waiting to see what would happen next.
Fuck, dude.
Na tarde de hoje, documento foi entregue, também colete.
Minuto ao senhor, doutor.
Nós estamos assistindo ritual, o ritual final desse episódio, o ritual que precede a libertação das duas reféns, das duas adolescentes, e a entrega.
They blew the door.
Barulho, exatamente, barulho de disparo. Houve disparo lá dentro.
Everyone's gone. They have. I don't know, dude. This is so dumb.
It all happened in the blink of an eye, as in an instant, Gate would blow open the door, which was followed by a puff of smoke and 4 loud gunshots. The scene is hectic for a minute, until suddenly, we see Nayara stumble out of the door, bleeding heavily from her face, where she falls into the arms of an officer. Then, a stretcher is taken into and out of the room, with Eloa strapped to it.
Both girls got shot? What the fuck,
as she's rushed down the
Brazil?
stairs and taken into an ambulance, And even at this point, these news crews just couldn't help themselves, as they stuck their cameras in the window of that very same ambulance.
Dude, I love, dude, journalism is beautiful. I love journalism. I love the truth. I love chasing answers. This is twisted human psychology. This isn't journalism. These people are fucking monsters. Every news station needs to be held accountable for making this worse.
Rescue workers were desperately trying to save Iloa's life. In the fray, Lindenberg had been struck by a rubber bullet and pulled from the unit where police piled on top of him, thus finally bringing the crisis to an end.
Dude, smash his face into the fucking ground.
But not before he would fire his weapon 3 times. One shot would hit Nayara's hand, with a bullet traveling directly through it and then striking her in the face, while Iloa was struck twice, once in the groin and once directly in the head. Despite being given immediate medical attention, Iloa Pimentel fell into a coma, and though she fought bravely for many days, she was eventually pronounced brain dead, before she would ultimately pass away. Her funeral was held days later, where over 30,000 people would pay their respects for the girl whose kidnapping many had watched on their household TVs. In the days that followed, Nayara would make a full recovery, and she would later go on to speak out about her story and how she was pressured by law enforcement to revisit the scene that day, with her accounts leading to heavy criticism against the officers who were working her case. And it wasn't just for that reason either, as her testimony also exposed just how poorly planned out Gates' entry of the home actually was.
This whole thing sucks.
According to officials, the team only entered the building because they had heard a gunshot, claiming that Lindenberg had fired first, which prompted them to react. Though it's evident from the footage at the scene and from Nayara's own testimony that this actually wasn't the case, and Lindenberg had only begun shooting as a result of that door being blown open. And making things even more troubling, despite blowing the door open, it took officers as long as 7 to 15 seconds to enter the apartment, a time span in which Lindenberg would fire all 3 of his shots. It's unclear why they hesitated for so long before they entered the home.
Back to the beginning when I was like, he was firing out the window, he has no extra bullets, it's a revolver. Dude, this is...
But they must have known that the blast was going to trigger some sort of reaction from Lindenberg, and their decision not only to breach the door in that manner, but also their decision to wait, undoubtedly contributed to the death of Iloa. And truthfully, it's a miracle that Nayara wasn't killed as well.
Yeah, God bless. She got shot. She covered her face, got shot in the hand and then the face. And they sent that was the girl they sent back for no reason.
Though obviously, it wasn't just law enforcement who had failed Iloa in the situation, with many pointing their fingers at members of the media, especially those who directly interfered with the situation, as their behavior undoubtedly factored into Lindenberg's behavior. Though despite this, none of the journalists ever expressed any regret over their handling of the situation, and to my knowledge, none of them faced any form of repercussions. As a result of his many crimes, Lindenberg would be sentenced to 90+ years in prison, though due to Brazilian law, the sentence was reduced to just 30 years, making it likely that he will someday be released from prison. Which, for now, brings us to the end of this tragic story. Though there is one more detail about this case that I just had to mention at the end here, because it somehow makes this story even more bizarre, as just days after Iloa's death, her father Aldo would disappear.
What?
Throughout the entire hostage crisis, Aldo was essentially invisible to the public, as the press was forbidden from interviewing any of Iloa's family. But as a result of Nayara's recapture, Aldo had become so stressed that he collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. There, he would make a full recovery, but when he was carried away from the scene, the cameras would capture his image as he lay on a stretcher, with the photo being broadcast all over the news that day, where a detective at home just so happened to recognize him. As it turns out, Aldo was a wanted man, having been accused of murdering at least 2 people back in the 90s as part of a Brazilian gang, one of which was even a police chief, and from that moment he had been...
Her dad?
on the run ever since,
What a
with
fucking
Aldo
plot
actually
twist.
being an alias for his real name, Everaldo. During this whole situation, Eloa's father was quite literally a killer on the run, and he had been blending into his new life for over a decade.
Her dad was a murderer? What the... What did he... Dude,
Until the moment his face was broadcast all over Brazil, which in turn caused him to flee the area immediately after. Though eventually, after a full year later, Everaldo would finally be captured and sent to prison, marking the end of one of the most shocking television cases we've ever explored, and what may very well be the darkest moment in television history.
What an absolute plot twist. What the fuck, dude? That's insane. Shout out to Nick, honestly. Wow. Oh, I love you guys, honestly. Bing bong.